Hello and welcome to the Rabbit Hole Heroines. I am Jessica, the Big Weird Mom.
And I am Jess, Crazy Mother Runner.
And we have a very special guest today. We are going down the culty rabbit hole that is Laura from The Pretty Basic. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely happy to be here.
Yeah. So, we're just going to hop in today. I know that we've got a lot of questions for her. So we are going to jump straight into the rabbit hole. Laura, if you want to start off by introducing yourself, tell us your handles, and then we'll just jump right in.
Sure. Yeah. I'm Laura Smith. My handle on TikTok and pretty much everywhere is at The Pretty Basic, which I chose because I'm a basic white girl and I wanted to own that before people started to troll me about it. So
just be right up front.
You're exactly. Let's just get ahead of it. So I grew up I'm 35 now. I live just north of Austin, 2 dogs, no kids. I run a business out of my house. The reason I'm here on your podcast today is because I was raised in a cult. What I didn't realize was a cult until I was an adult looking back on it. What I usually tell people is that if you've seen the 19 Kids and Counting show with the Duggars, is the same cult that they were in. So if you thought their life was weird, or it was on purpose, they were in the same cult that my family was in. So the basics of the cult were pretty much the cult leader, Bill Gothard, was akin to God. God spoke to him to tell us lowly people how we should live. So he would then share his message with the fathers of the household, because the fathers are the most important person in the household.
Of course.
They would share. Then they may or may not share the info with the mothers.
Do they matter?
Right. No, not in that. Not to Bill Gothard, not at all. So, and ironically, of course, he was never married, never had kids. So he had all of this knowledge on how to raise kids just ready to go for some reason. So then the separation of gender became between me and my brothers. Boys were allowed to get an education, go to college, have opinions. Girls were not. We were supposed to learn the household, learn how to be pregnant.
Get
when
married.
The Lord wanted you to. Get married and have babies, be barefoot in the kitchen. That's it. So I did not go to college. So that was a choice, I guess. Whatever.
Yeah.
But that's the basics.
Yeah. So, I didn't even know this about you until today, even though I've been following you from the beginning. Your very first TikTok video went viral because you were one of the first to really dive into this, self-proclaimed, I was in a cult and I want to tell my story. So let's take a look at that video that we have. This is her very first viral video on TikTok.
Put your hand down if you decided to make your first TikTok video about how your parents joined a cult when you were 12 and they treated boys and girls very differently. Girls were supposed to stay in the home, boys were supposed to go out and get a job and support the family. So you and your brothers had very different childhoods, and sometimes they blame you for making things up, but you actually lived these things. And the leader of the cult really, really liked little girls, and it affected a lot of your friends, but it didn't affect you as badly. And so you decided you want to tell your story somehow, and your therapist said it might be a good idea to write a journal. But when you were younger, journals weren't allowed because you weren't allowed to have any privacy, because you might write something that is sinful and you might go to hell because of it. So you don't like to write, but you don't mind talking and sharing your story with people. So you decided to get on TikTok and give this a try. And the man who was the leader of the cult is still alive, and he should be in jail, but he's not. And every day you check Google to see if anything has happened, but nothing has, and you're gonna definitely give names on this account.
Definitely gonna spill the tea. There you go.
So fast. I forgot I included all that information.
I know.
It's like, how can you cram it in 60 seconds? Let's get it.
So anytime I watch the video again, I say, put your hand down in the beginning, and it bothers me so much. I'm like,
oh,
I didn't even do the one little finger down thing. Yeah, I'm not a natural TikToker, so this has
Hey,
been
it
an
was your
adventure.
very first TikTok, and that never
Yes.
happens. You know, it doesn't go viral your first time. You were
No.
kind of an enigma there. So, did
Yeah.
that go viral right away? Explain that experience.
Right away. I made the video, and because I downloaded TikTok a good 6 months before that, and was just watching it. Pandemic made me feel better, see funny things. So I was like, you know what? Let me just. My therapist had suggested I start keeping a journal. To this day, I don't keep a journal. I just can't do it. So instead, I put all my information out on the internet. I didn't think a single person would even see it. I thought, you know what? I'm going to make these TikToks, and they'll all be right there in the app for me to refer to as a journal, as my thought process, my healing, all of this goes on. So I literally didn't even look at TikTok again. And in the morning, I woke up to 1 million views.
Jesus.
The next morning.
Wow.
And I couldn't process it. I still can't process it. The fact that more than 1 million people have seen me say all that.
Yeah.
It's very
That's crazy.
It's very humbling, and it gives you a sense of responsibility that I want to do my best to tell my story as authentically to me as I can. And because I was raised in such a way that you weren't allowed to have your own thoughts, feelings, etc., it's hard for me as an adult to actually explain things sometimes. I know what they are, but I can't. So that's why I'm in therapy, to get those tools, because I need them. I wasn't given them as a child. So yeah.
Right. And why don't you start from the beginning with your family and your family's involvement? How did that kind of come to be?
Yeah, so we were pretty strict Southern Baptists from the beginning, from when I was born. But then around age 12, my brothers were younger, 2 years younger each, and we were going to a new church, and my mom met a family, 2 different families who had gone to Bill Gothard's seminar on how to train your children correctly. So they thought, let's go to the seminar. So they went to the seminar, and it was Bill Gothard teaching you how to raise your kids. And I guess it resonated with them. I guess they thought it was a good idea. So then after the seminar, after that, it's called the basic seminar. They will try to upsell you into their homeschool program. So my mom thought, we're already homeschooling. We were already homeschooling. So she thought, great, a curriculum, all this good information I want to instill in my kids. So we enrolled in their homeschool program, which is the cult. So that's how it started. I was 12. Many of my peers were in ATI from birth. So it was a little bit of an adjustment for me, but not that much spiritually.
I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah, because Southern Baptists are very fundamentalist, etc.
Yes.
Pretty
I'm a
pretty
former
much the
Southern
same.
Baptist.
But the adjustments were like the way I had to dress, the things I wasn't allowed to read certain books, watch certain movies, even kid movies. Like we weren't allowed to watch Disney, just very those type of things that changed for me. So
right. And what was that adjustment like for you? Besides, what you said, was that like ringing any alarm bells for you, or was it just like, oh, this is another kind of
it didn't. I don't know, because it didn't ring any alarm bells for me, although I was a little weirded out because, and this is a standard practice with ATI families, I don't know where it comes from or who told someone to do this, but you would get like all your Disney movies and all your bad stuff and grill it, like you'd put it on the grill and light it all on fire. Yeah.
Jesus.
So that was bizarre.
Yeah. Like a sacrificial, I'm going to give up all of these sins kind of thing, basically.
Yes. And like if you burn it, somehow you're absolved.
Yeah.
But I was particularly sad that I had to burn my troll dolls because I really loved those things. And they were somehow evil. So I had to burn.
Well,
because they had
those
naked
gems.
booties. They had those naked booties. That's what it was.
The gems and the belly
And the
button. That's too
cultural.
Too cultural. Exactly.
I feel like for Southern Baptists, and you, especially if you're already homeschooled, they already have that mentality. Men are first, you know, women are
Yes.
docile, women are at home.
100%.
So I feel like while yes, you saw probably some big changes, I feel like initially it probably didn't feel too terribly
No.
dramatic.
It didn't. Because
Yeah.
pretty much my life was already that way. And I think that's why many of the cult members were Southern Baptists, because
Mhm.
that belief structure was already there. So it
falls into
didn't seem
place.
weird.
Yeah.
Hmm. Wow. And how was that change for your brothers? You have two brothers, right?
Yeah.
Was that
Same thing for me at that age. Like, we just thought it was weird that we were having to burn our stuff, but we also thought having a fire was kind of cool because we were kids. So we were like,
let's burn stuff.
Yeah, we weren't. It wasn't that big of a deal. So yeah, no, they were. At first we were like cool with it because it didn't change our lives. Like, we still saw our friends because also our friends were getting into the same thing we were, so we weren't alone.
right.
So nope, nothing weird.
And tell us about the seminars that you would go to. That was the summertime, right? How did those work? And as you got older, how did things change in the way that, you know, you saw the world and the way that it functioned, kind of, you know, as in the cult?
Yeah. So the main seminars, the big money makers for Bill Gothard were the basic seminar, and then there was like a more advanced version called the advanced seminar. And the people who were in the cult didn't necessarily the people who attended the seminar didn't necessarily join the cult. So once we joined the cult, we were basically required to attend those seminars. And as a child, though, you would be sent to what was called the Children's Institute. So during the seminar, you'd get booted to, I would call it like a day camp, a Christian day camp, and you would have teams. And as I got older, I became one of the leaders. Then you become a leader, and then you do all this stuff. And of course, during those times, we were being indoctrinated with the just Bill Gothard's ideologies, that certain thoughts are sins, and you know, all of that. So once I aged out of that, the cult has classes that you can attend at training centers. Then they also have training center staff. It's the same kids. So you can pay to go to a seminar. One that I went to was a music theory seminar, which was it was good information, but it wouldn't give you any sort of actual accreditation for anything.
Right.
I really believe it was, again, just one of Bill Gothard's ways to make money, because it was so expensive. It was 3 weeks, and I want to say it was a couple of $1,000s.
Jesus.
And yeah, so
could have gone to gymnastics camp for that.
Right. So that was in he would buy up old hotels and renovate them, and those would be the training centers where we would go. And people still stayed in the hotels. Mostly it was cult families staying in the hotels. But if I wasn't going to a class at a training center, I was being sent to be on staff at the training center, which just meant hotel staff. So the girls, and we were all 18 and under, mostly 14, 15, 16. So we were doing hard hotel labor for free, not just for free. My parents actually had to pay for me to have the privilege to go to work for free at Bill Gothard's hotels.
Right.
Yeah.
That's insane. And so can anybody just walk into one of these places and check in a hotel? Did you see that often? Like,
a couple times, yes. And it was so weird because you're thinking, how did you find this? Where are you from? What's going on here? Especially the one that is in Flint, Michigan. It doesn't exist anymore as a cult training center, but they had this huge, it was called the Crim race, where people would run, and it was a marathon or something like that. I don't know a lot about running, but so
I do.
So thousands of runners would come to Flint, Michigan, and stay in the hotel. They sponsored it. They had all that.
Oh, wow.
So we were And so after that was like the hardest work time I'd ever experienced. We were not sleeping for like four or 5 days, just cleaning and cleaning and cleaning these hotel rooms and eating and then cleaning and cleaning. And like it was
Oh my gosh.
It was insane. It was the hardest I've ever
And your
worked in my-
parents were paying for you to do that.
Yes.
So he's getting paid from these people that are coming to stay there.
Yes.
And then he's getting paid labor to him.
Yep.
I mean,
Yes.
he's not stupid. I mean, he's
No, and he's not stupid. And he now past 10 years sort of timeline, he obviously is rich. And
oh yeah.
so it's my personal belief and opinion that the abuse that happened under these situations, either the accusers have been paid off, PDs have definitely been paid off, in my opinion, because I don't understand
crazy.
how that could exist
Right.
without any charges.
Because there are such strict laws, at least even from the time that I was starting to work at 15, 16 years old.
Yeah.
There's such strict laws for who can work and how many hours and where you can work. Like, how is he getting around all of this? Is it just
Religion.
because it's education and
Oh,
religion?
exactly. Religion.
And it's religious. It's not a
Yep.
business. It's a ministry.
Yep.
So
Wow.
It's
So they're not
volunteer
paying taxes,
work.
probably.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And not only volunteer work, but we were paying to be there. So
Yeah.
it was even like worse.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to pay for my kid to be an indentured servant. Yay.
Yeah.
Exactly. And of course the parents were like, it's good for them to be hard workers. Okay, I get that, but not like that,
Yeah.
Not
I
like
know. Can you go into a little bit, like at these places, you said that the girls and the boys were kept pretty separate, and how the boys were really given jobs to design to help them move up in the world. How did that kind of structure into this hotel environment?
Yeah, so the boys were, the girls were housekeeping, and then the boys were everything else, maintenance, construction, and things like that. So if there was a boy that had been sent to a training center that didn't have any knowledge of anything, he got actual training in electricity. What am I saying?
Electrician.
As an electrician,
Yeah.
in construction, so they got taught real skills by
training.
professionals, right? And there was one, even at back to the Flint one of the boys wanted to learn how to be an elevator repairman. And so they paid for him to go to that kind of school. And so he was certified, and he was telling me about it one time while we were riding in the elevator, the only time we ever could speak to each other, how he was excited because after this he could go out and actually get a job doing that, and it paid well. And I was like,
Wow.
So they're getting real life skills, and you're just in their mind, you were getting real life skills, I guess.
Right.
Learn how to
Exactly.
clean and take care of people.
We were getting the only skills we needed to know.
Yeah, that's
Right.
crazy.
So,
And what was your mindset at this point? Were you thinking like, oh, I'm going to grow up, I'm going to stay in this church, I'm going to find someone here and get married? Was that your mindset?
Yep. I was like, some boy is going to want to court me. We're going to get married. We're going to have babies. I was totally down.
I'm going to live the dream.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that you kind of go into in your TikToks is this military type academy. I think if I'm remembering correctly,
Yeah.
At what point did that kind of switch gears for you? Because you went to work there too, right?
Yes. I worked at a lot of the training centers because my home life I didn't like it, and I would get spanked to the point of abuse. And so I thought, at least at the training centers, I can't get spanked. So I would just rather go there. So this military, it's such a laughable place. It still exists. You can still go through this program to this day. They send boys. It's just like basic training. They try to make it like basic training for the Army. They have barracks where they stay. They have uniforms. It's in Big Sandy, Texas, which is actually close to me. So sometimes I'm like,
Okay. What if it's what's going on there?
Yeah. But that's what that is. They talk about it as if it were like a search and rescue type of training. Definitely not. It's way more paramilitary. They learn guns and proper care of guns and all this stuff, which like search and rescue is probably not going to do that. But they actually asked me to come work there, which was rare.
Right, I was gonna think that's not a girl's place.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
But someone so you have to submit projects to the cult. Oops, my headphones, sorry. You have to submit projects to the cult every now and then that they want you to complete your sorry, this is messing up for me.
It's okay. Mine does it too. As I'm always going like this.
Yeah. To complete your indoctrination, they want to know how you're doing. So when I would be home, I would be working on those kind of projects. And they were all super ugly. And so I redesigned it in Microsoft Word to make it cute and prettier. So someone at headquarters, the headquarters of the whole cult, saw it and was like, we need a graphic designer at Alert at the military academy, and she looks like she's doing all right, so let's ask her to come. So I went, and I thought, you know what? I'm not going to fuck this up. I'm going to act right. I'm not going to I didn't ever try to get in trouble, but sometimes.
Yeah. It is what it is.
It is what
it's
it is.
inevitable.
Yeah. Just being a human being was offensive to them, so it didn't matter, you know?
No. Having a vagina was offensive.
Yeah,
there you go. There you go. Yes, exactly. So I went, and I was actually super excited because I loved doing that kind of stuff. I had no training whatsoever. I made it in Microsoft Word. Like, I wouldn't even know how to do that now. So I went, and I was immediately sorry, I jump around a lot.
It's okay.
They have a huge campus. It's thousands of acres. Part of that is an actual neighborhood of houses, and that's where their staff lives. And so there were 2 houses where the girls' staff lived. And I was pretty much told right away that I wasn't ugly enough to eat dinner with everyone in the mess hall like everyone was allowed to. So I needed to go home for lunch and dinner. And that was just going to be the best choice for me.
Boys.
Don't be tempting those boys.
Right. And I'm like, that's kind of a backhanded compliment, so I'll take it. But
thanks for saying I'm like, too hot for the mess hall. I'll be going home.
I know. And so I was like really trying to mind my P's and Q's because I really liked the job.
The experience.
And which, by the way, my dad was paying for me to go do.
Jesus. So, okay.
Yeah. So I was called into the highest ranking dude's office a lot. They called him the colonel. I could not take that seriously, but about how I was dressed. Like, he didn't particularly like the skirt I was wearing the other day because it had pockets on the back of it. And
it's situated booty. You can't be having that.
Yeah. So I would get called into his office with either just him or him and his second in command, another full-grown man, and being told that I'm essentially dressing like a slut and I need to stop it. And I'm all by myself. I'm 17. I have no one to stand up for me, no one to take my side or anything. So I would leave the office just being like so traumatized. Like,
yeah.
So I was there for a few months, and finally one activity I would do is I would go kayaking. They had a lake behind the houses in this neighborhood. So I would go kayaking by myself in a long skirt down to my ankles, just because I wanted something to do. So he called me into the office and said, you can't go kayaking anymore because the families that live in the houses reported that you were just going to do that to show off. Show off
what your kayaking skills?
I have no idea. Yeah, right. Like I don't know. They just didn't like
But-
it. So I wasn't allowed to kayak anymore.
Wow.
So that was one strike, apparently. And one strike was enough. So he called me in again and he said, your dad's coming to get you today. Go back to your house and pack up all your stuff. And I was like, what the heck? And
Jesus.
I called my dad and I was like, are you coming here? He's like, yeah. Do you know why though? And I'm like, no, they didn't tell you why. And he didn't, this was sort of the end for my parents too. We were all kind of seeing, wow, this is bullshit and mistreatment and it shouldn't happen this way. So I wasn't allowed to, he told me specifically, it was a Saturday, they had brunch. He's like, you're not allowed to go to brunch. You have to just go home. And I snapped. I was like, buddy. So I went to brunch and I sat there just to make everyone feel awkward. And there was another girl leaving on good terms and they gave her this little book of like prayers or something. And everyone said goodbye to her and they like sang a song for her because they're always singing and it's so stupid. But then the girl who had given her the gift came over like all awkward and like gave me one too. And I'm like, I picked it up and I walked over to a trash can and threw it in the trash can as loud and hard as I could.
Girl.
Because I was going out with a bang. If I was going out, I was going out with a bang. If they had told me any reason why, even if it was a dumb one, like we don't like how you dress or blah, if they had said anything, any reason, I probably wouldn't have done that. But it was definitely just under a cloud. When I left with my dad, I felt like the biggest slut shaming feeling I've ever felt in my life because they clearly didn't want me there because of the way I look, the way I dress, this. And so I trashed the book and they kept talking to me when they would call me into the office about this one particular guy. Barely knew who he even was. But I saw him in the hallway and I walked right up to him and I was like, they're sending me home. Do you know why? And he was so scared. He literally turned around and ran away from me in the hallway.
He probably went to pee his pants.
Yeah, good.
He's like, they outed me. I'm lusting after her. She's my wet dream in the bedroom and everything.
Literally. And so I left, and that's so funny you say that because I had a friend recently who her brother was there at the same time I was there on staff. And apparently after I left, they had to have a meeting with all of the guys explaining why I left, and they had to pray with them over my attitude and how I made them feel. Yeah. So they had a meeting about me. So
we don't like sex meeting. Let's get it together, boys. We don't.
Right. So that was the last straw for me. And I told my parents I'm done. I'm leaving home. And it took them a few more years to truly be, we're done with this. But that was definitely one of the biggest catalysts.
Start. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So was that that was your final straw? Were you just cut and dry after that? This is not something I'm going to do. How old were you at this point?
I was just about to be 18.
Okay.
So when I turned
5
18,
years, 6 years in it.
Yeah. And so when I turned 18, I went and taught English in South Korea. I literally went as far from home as I possibly could.
And how was that adjustment for you?
It was a culture shock, but it felt so nice to just be in charge of myself and not be in charge of other people's thoughts and feelings. And I thought, I'm in a whole different country. They don't think that way here. This is, I'm not in that community. I'm not in anything close to it. So I felt for once like I was actually my own person. And it was great.
Yeah.
And how was it getting, like, do you still have feelings of like, oh, I'm not being modest enough, or like, do you feel like you're tempting other people, or that slut shaming that you were talking about, has that followed you into your new life?
No, it hasn't, but it turned into just the worst self-esteem because I never thought I was good enough to just even exist. I was constantly having to, justify my existence. So I didn't even wear a bikini until I was 23, 24. I didn't wear shorts because not that I thought I was going to go to hell or anything, but I just didn't feel comfortable.
Right.
It
Well, you're
felt
conditioned
weird.
to be in a
Right.
certain way all the time.
Exactly.
I can imagine. Yeah.
To this day, it's hard for me to wear shorts because I feel like everybody's staring at my legs, and it's just simply not true. And people don't give that much of a shit. And in my mind, I know this.
Yeah.
But in my heart, I'm just like, you can't wear that because people will care, and they don't care.
Yeah.
Right.
So
talk me through kind of, I think I recall that when the Duggars came on TV, you had already left the church, correct?
Yes. I was trying to remember what year they already. Yes.
How do you know how that affected everyone? What was the general consensus? I know eventually they were kicked out because they were too
I don't know.
Throwing too much ankle, right?
Yeah, they were
probably brought too much attention to them too, honestly.
Yeah, and but they still speak at conferences and stuff, so they're not totally
I think Jim separated. And his wife or Jim, I think, is still very involved.
Because I'm sure they bring in a lot of money, so Bill probably can't totally cut ties because he wants the money. So
Jim turns on his own kids. I mean, he's like
I have no clue what the Duggars are doing currently. I'm still watching the first season, so I'm trying on purpose not to check up on them currently because I want to follow the show as it goes.
There's a lot going on. I listened to Crystal Ball, who's a YouTuber, and she's basically like spills the tea on all of the reality shows, and the Duggars are one of her favorites. So I've definitely heard a lot about them over the years. Yeah,
I'm sure it's a mess. But so I don't. Well, we weren't allowed to watch TV or know anything about pop culture or have internet or anything like that. So I didn't know anybody who knew about their show or anything until later in my 20s. And I had found a couple of people on Facebook and stuff like that. And they were like, oh my gosh, have you seen the Duggars on TV? And I'm like, no, and I have no interest. So
I don't want to go back there.
Yeah, even when I heard about it, I was like, I'll pass. So watching it now is pretty interesting.
Yeah, how has that been for you? I know that there's a couple times you were watching, like I remember you were watching the first season and they were talking about shared closets because, everyone just basically with the clothes, it's impossible to separate everybody's clothes when you have
and
that
it makes sense. It totally makes sense. But when you've known, I don't want to try to put this delicately, when you've known young girls who were treated wrongly by their fathers or brothers and other males in the cult, seeing a room where two genders would gather and change clothes, I flipped out. I couldn't handle that concept at all. And I hated that. I still hate it.
And that was an issue with the Duggars. I mean, I don't know if you got there yet, but that was a big issue with Joshua.
And I heard about Josh through a family grapevine thing because I've met the Duggars. I don't know them on that level, but we knew who they were. And I've met the girls a lot because we're the same age. So we were going through a lot of the same programs at the same time. So hearing about that, not from TV, not from pop culture, but from like somebody's mom. And then my mom told me, and I don't know, I just wasn't surprised.
I wouldn't have either.
I don't think at this stage he should have any sort of a platform whatsoever. And I think that his wife should leave him, but that's just my opinion.
Well, I was just touching on that real quick. It's funny because I try to remember, I think it was Ryan. We did like a random, duel one day when we both got duels on TikTok. And we were talking about this, particularly about, because the big thing right now is the whole pedophilia and these concerns around children. And I said, but ironically, like 76% of those are white males. And most of them have some type of affiliation with the church. And it's because of that shame that is put on them by the church that creates this thing that not only do they not act on their feelings and emotions and lust, whatever you want to call it, but they end up doing these things that are totally like off the wall, you know, in secret because of the fact that they've been shamed for so long. So it's like, it's just another part of the church culture that is like, not only harming it in the moment, but for years to come and end up harming other people. Like, I mean, I can't even imagine how many like young girls have been abused in that type of environment.
Well, when you suppress sexuality and just so constantly suppress, and then you're sharing a closet with your sisters and changing in front of them, it's gonna come out sideways, and that obviously doesn't make it right.
Well, not only this,
but like
well, not only suppressing the sexuality, but just suppressing our ability to express any feelings or thoughts at all.
Right. They don't even talk about it.
Right. So even if a young boy thought, wow, I feel weird, I need to talk to someone about this, they wouldn't even get to that point. They wouldn't even get to the discovery point of what am I feeling? Because that was
taboo. You don't talk about it. Yeah.
No. Right. Yeah.
I agree.
How was your growing up that way for you? How did you kind of come into your, for lack of a better word, sexuality while being suppressed? Like how was that experience for you?
Yeah. So my first sexual experience was actually at a training center. And I have talked about it on my TikTok. So, and I think every time I say I think I've talked about this on my TikTok, I think of a new thing, and I'm like, oh, maybe so who knows? So looking back, it was definitely a non-consent situation, but I didn't realize that for the longest time because I didn't fight back, and I liked him, and all these things. He was older than me. He was 22, I believe.
Wow.
And I was 17. And I may have been 16.
Did he work there?
I can't remember. Do what?
Did he work there at the training center?
So he worked in maintenance, the boys' side, and I worked in housekeeping, and we were both leaders, and so we both had master keys to everywhere. And my friend actually liked him, and she was also my roommate. So they were trying to like get together all the time. And so I was like, you guys can just hang out in our room. I don't care. I'm just going to be sleeping. I'd love to sleep all the time because they don't let you sleep much because that's how they control you.
Right. So, keep you exhausted.
Yeah. I'm like, y'all can do whatever. I'm going to get my 4 hours of sleep. Peace out. So
it's crazy. They
would come into my room on the other hotel bed. And I don't even know what they did, to be honest with you. Noises happened. So then one night, I guess she fell asleep. I don't know. And he hopped in my bed and he started making out with me. And I was like, okay, that's not bad. So I made out with him back. And then we basically did everything except actually have sex. So throughout the time that I was there. And actually we were not detected. We were not discovered by anyone, but someone narked on me after I left. And of course, I was the one that got in trouble because the girls bore the responsibility.
You're the center. You're the one that's, you enticed
I was the temptress and blah, blah. So Bill called my house and
the leader of the cult?
Yeah. He was like, get your dad on the phone. And I'm like, okay.
Oh, no.
So he wanted to know what happened. And I was like, so uncomfortable.
Your dad know?
all around it was bad, but I felt like, oh my God, like it was so what I come to realize now was very weird was that Bill asked very specific questions. He was like, well, at what time did he touch you here? And what time did he, et cetera, et cetera. And after about 15 minutes of this questioning, I was like, you know what? I don't feel comfortable with this. And I like put the phone aside and I was like, Dad, I don't like this. And he's like, yeah, let's hang up. And so I was like, okay, bye. And I just hung up.
Okay, bye.
Yeah, like, I don't like this anymore. Bye. So that was so gross.
Well,
like,
didn't he have allegations of sexual misconduct too?
Tons.
Can you talk to that about?
So I can't speak really specifically because I don't want to tell other people's stories for them. So he never was inappropriate with me on that level. But I would be in the room when he would be sitting next to a girl and feeling up on her leg, under her skirt type of thing. And I still have blocked those emotions and feelings out. I couldn't tell you what I was thinking or feeling during those moments. He clearly thought that I was someone that could be trusted because I witnessed him doing a lot of stuff. And in fact, I lived in Seattle a few years ago. I worked for a major shipping conglomerate, whatever you want to call. And my work phone rang one day, and it was a police officer from where the cult is headquartered, and basically telling me that I was a witness listed in several cases, and would I ever be willing to? And I'm like, yes, I will be on the next plane. Oh, wow. And then nothing ever came of it. So that's what I saw with Bill specifically. But many of the male leaders had inappropriate
I'm sure.
Things with the girls. So, and then of course, just the boys in the cult followed sort of Josh Duggar's lead sometimes, and sometimes their own leadership's lead, in that, women were just objects and we wouldn't tell anyone. And even if we did, it would be our fault anyway. So it really set up a culture for widespread abuse.
Yeah. And was there any ever why did he never get married? Was there any chatter about that?
He said it was God's calling for him not to be married. So people are just like, okay.
Celibate though.
Whatever. Exactly. So I don't recall ever talking about it we just didn't care. Like, at some points we made fun of him because he was so old that we were like, he's never gonna get married.
No.
He's in his 70s. Like,
gonna die alone.
Yeah. So, and like, why get married when you have your pick of, innocent
children?
Yeah. So ridiculous.
Jeez. So what's the general attitude towards the Duggars? I mean, are they idolized? And then I know you've talked about some other people who are like kind of famous within that circle. How do people react to the Duggars?
So I don't know how the Duggars are taken now in the cult. I have no idea. I don't speak to anybody that's still in. So I don't know. I would be curious to know that myself. What are they? What do people think about them? It would be weird if someone had opinions about it, because you're technically not supposed to watch TV or have internet. Right. So you would have to wonder.
Yeah. How do you know about us?
Right. Yes. So, and then with the girls, I mentioned some girls that I sort of related to being influencers in the cult.
Right.
Because they were allowed to do things that we weren't allowed to do. And they were speakers. They would speak at conferences to us as girls. They were allowed to wear makeup. They were allowed to do their hair. They had perfect hair, perfect makeup, perfect clothing. In fact, some of the rules that we weren't allowed to do, like have a button-down shirt that gapped, like if there was any gaps in between the buttons, if your boobs were like pulling them out too much. Even if you have a shirt on underneath, they would make you change. They were allowed to do that. One specific thing I can remember, but they were definitely treated differently. It was definitely a situation to where we were told to look up to them, and they were the perfect ones.
I feel like that's in the regular church though too. Those special women that are like the leaders that keep the ladies in line, basically. I mean, that's really what their job is.
Because the men are too lazy to actually do it, and so they got to make the women do everything, including keep their own selves in line.
Crazy.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, it's all control. This is all what
it is.
Everything was about control. It's crazy.
Yeah, 100%. And fear.
So, fear, 100%. Absolutely. Isn't there another family that's on TLC right now? Or you did some reviews on
Bates.
them too.
Yeah.
Bates,
yeah. I don't know I didn't know them. I didn't hear about them while I was in. And I'm only seeing them now on the show, and I'm only on the first season. But Gil, the dad, is on the board of directors of the cult. And he's also all over their websites and everything. So they're still like, maybe it's just the parents and the younger kids. I don't know, but they're still heavily involved in the cult. For sure.
So crazy.
Yeah.
What about the other family of the blonde kids? The
Plaths.
Yeah, the Plath
they're not in the cult. They just have a lot of the same fundamentalist ideas and stuff like
just
that.
Just another extremist type religious group. Yeah.
Yeah. I watched one episode of theirs because people were asking me if they were, and I'm like, all right, let me watch an episode and put it on TikTok, and definitely has the same. But to me, what I thought was an interesting difference was the parents in the Plathville show seemed to me just to be very overbearing and controlling, and they own it. Whereas with cult parents, it was more, we're overbearing and controlling because God told us to be. And God said, you're going to hell if you don't raise your children perfectly. So there was almost this, God was almost the scapegoat for their decisions. So I kind of, even though the Plath's parents are highly incorrect and inappropriate in most of the things they do, they at least own the fact that this is our decision.
Yeah.
It's rare that you see people own it.
Right. Especially when it's so extreme.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And they're all about it too. They're like, we don't want this girl to go to college because we don't want her to get any crazy ideas.
Right. And the Plath mom will say the stuff that the cult moms are thinking, but probably would never say because they wouldn't want to, I don't know, they wouldn't want to seem inappropriate or, just.
I'm curious how you think your TikTok has, because you were one of the first to come out. There have been lots of other people who have come out and told their story.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that this has had any effect on society and making moves towards maybe an actual lawsuit against him? Do you think that it's moving in the right direction, or, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm a little bit on the fence about things because there have been plenty of people and plenty of years and plenty of money going into getting him, basically. And it just hasn't happened. And so there's some shady shit going on that I'm not sure even TikTok can help with. But there are just too many powerful white men involved in the cult. Oh my gosh, there was one guy, I'm not going to remember his name. I'll try to make a video about it later, but he was actually I want to say in the oil industry. I don't remember his name right now, but I'm going to make a mental note to make a video about it, who used to be on the board of directors.
Okay.
So protecting Bill is their MO. And
at any cost.
At any cost. And so I am super glad that people feel brave enough to start telling their stories on TikTok like I did, because it has been so therapeutic. Just being heard and people saying, you know what, I hear what you're saying, and that was fucked up. Because I haven't had that in my life, because I don't open up to people. Well, now I do, because it's all on TikTok.
Yourself out there. Yeah.
So I'm more open about it now, but just simply being validated is something very foreign to kids who grew up in a cult like that. And it's amazing. And I'm so glad that there's more people on TikTok talking about it for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. How has your experience been through all of this? Has it been positive, negative? Or what are your thoughts on that?
It's been 100% positive. And I wouldn't even call this a negative because it's helping me learn more about myself, is I have to take long breaks sometimes and not post about it, not talk about it, not think about it, because it's really exhausting trying to process all of this information and trauma every day, even every week. I will take weeks off sometimes and just recoup. But despite that, it's definitely been the most positive experience I could have ever imagined. I don't know what I was thinking when I posted my first one. I'm not sure if I was like, what would happen if people saw this? I didn't even think that far.
Right.
So,
when you post that first one, you post that first one, it's like, what, 10 people are going to see it? Like, whatever.
If anybody, because I was really going to use it as like my journal. Because weirdly enough, so my therapist is like, you need to keep a journal. And I had just separated from my most recent ex-husband, and I had been trying to keep a journal again because a previous therapist told me the same thing. He went and read it. So people in my life do not allow me to have a safe space bound by paper for some reason. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to make myself a little TikTok account and we'll keep my thoughts organized here and
share it with the world.
Yeah. Now here we are.
What has been something that you kind of carried on from your childhood? Is there anything that you have? Do you have any challenges with that?
Tons. It's hard for me to put it into words because that's one of the challenges is not being able to, like, when I'm in therapy or when I'm trying to process something, I have to pull out a feelings chart like a little kid because I don't know what.
You didn't have a voice.
Exactly. I have to pick which one fits what I might be feeling, and I second guess myself all the time. I'm codependent, very codependent, because I had to manage everyone's emotions and around me. It's been, there's a lot of baggage that I'm not sure, as much as I can work on it in therapy and do the work every day. It's not a situation where one day I'm going to be like, oh, finally free of all of it. It's something I'm going to have to work with every single day of my life. So absolutely, for sure.
What I'm curious, what's your relationship with your brothers? Like, how did they come out of it?
So after I left, and my parents had already been treating my brothers differently as far as even just down to schoolwork. They were more focused on their education than mine. So my brothers had been going to dual credit college classes. So if you're homeschooled in Texas, you can go to like the local college and do high school.
Like a Bright Horizons kind of thing. Or
yes. So they had both been doing that for a couple of years, and which was very non-culty because the cult didn't want you to spend time with anyone except cult people. So my parents are very, very smart people, which I'm always intrigued to hear how people get into cults, because my parents are very, very, very intelligent people. And my mom actually supplemented our homeschool education with things because she saw that the cult education was not an education at all.
Lacking.
So when I left, that's pretty much when my parents were like, ugh, we won't mess with the boys and involving them in the cult anymore. They never had to go to the training centers. They never had to do anything that I did. So I'm not sure, my parents and I are on really good terms now. And I would love to ask them about that specifically someday. But they're also having to come to terms with the fact that they were in a cult. So it's processing for them too. So I still do have questions about that kind of thing for them. But my brothers are very successful young men now. One of my brothers is a pilot in the Air Force, and the other one is an officer in the Army, and he just finished law school. So yeah, they're great, and they definitely grew up with the same household as me. So the ideas that we learned in the cult, as far as heaven versus hell, not allowed to show feelings, that also affected them too. I'm not sure how specifically it's not, when we get together, we don't want to really talk about the cult.
Yeah, no.
So
I wonder why.
No. Right. But I feel overall, out of our family, I was the one that was most participatory in the cult activities. So yeah.
And I know you've talked about forgiving your parents. Can you tell us that story?
Yeah. So when I left home, I didn't really want to speak to them. Then I got married really young and really didn't speak to them for years and years. Just some casual things here and there, but I did not want to have a relationship with them. I was done with them.
Yeah.
And then just, I guess, by maturing and growing up a little bit, I decided I wanted to talk to them about it. And they apologized to me almost immediately. They said we should not have done that, and we should not have been involved that way. And so that was huge. Like, that healed a little bit of me. So I'm so grateful for them being just evolving as people.
Right.
It was super important. And now, to this day, we have boundaries that we don't cross with each other, just because you don't want to rehash stuff over and over. It's not helpful for anyone.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, they don't even go to the same type of church anymore. They go to a totally different denomination and everything, because they definitely realized this is not right. And so, which again, I'm grateful for.
Story.
Yeah, and many of my friends don't have that same
luxury
story. A lot of the parents are still sort of in the trenches of the cult mentality. So
well, you hear all of these stories, especially with the Mormon church, where there are like thousands of homeless gay boys in Salt Lake City who are just wandering around. They have no one to call family, and their family has just abandoned them. It's so sad. Do you see any of that? I mean, there isn't really like a central area where this
which is so crazy to try to explain ATI to people, is because people automatically think cult, one place, it's a compound, it's a but Bill Gothard's little dirty fingers spread literally all over the world. There was a training center in Moscow. There was a training center in New Zealand, all over. So, definitely. I saw boys come to training centers for the sole purpose of curing their gayness.
So those camp situations.
Right. So Bill Gothard didn't have a conversion camp of his own. He would suggest other ones, or just suggest they be sent to the training centers for one-on-one work. Yeah. So it was so sad. And actually, my younger brother is gay, so he went through a lot, and I have no clue what that was like for him. Even he's explained it to me and stuff, but I want him to get on TikTok and tell his story, because he's got a totally different story than I do, having
and viewpoint, being a boy.
Right.
I'm curious. So did he get these people by connecting to these churches? Were it mainly Southern Baptist? Like, was there any type of way that he kind of indoctrinated these people with his seminars? Like, what was his?
It was.
I mean, you said he came to your church, right? And was like, "Oh, we're offering a teaching class for kids or whatever, or parenting."
Yeah. So in the 70s, his seminars were huge. Like hundreds of thousands of people would go to them. I have no idea how it first started, but I do know that the fear of having kids getting into drugs, going to jail, all of this stuff was what drove the parents to go to these seminars. And his methods worked, because his methods were basically just beat the disobedience out of them and suppress anything that might
be
arise.
sinful. Yeah.
Right. So his methods worked. So by word of mouth, parents would be like, wow, look at those kids. They're so well behaved. So they would go to the seminar. So that's how it all
terrified.
Yes, we're not behaved, we're scared. So that's how that grew. And then I can't remember if it was in the 80s or early 90s if you started ATI. I can't remember. But it's all on the website, so people can research if they want to.
Yeah.
But literally, from what I know, it was word of mouth based, because the kids coming out of this seminar training that their parents would have would end up being perfectly behaved robot children. So when in reality, they were being abused at home. So then it just grew and grew.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. You know, I have to tell you a story. I was driving around this preschool. It said Goddard Preschool, but it was Goddard. And I thought that it, like, I just kind of didn't really know. And I was like, what? I was like, preschool? They're doing it in preschool now? And I Googled it and I was like, oh, it's not the same thing. Okay, good. I just
have a Goddard in preschool.
Just FYI, preschoolers were definitely indoctrinated and abused and all that. So yeah, it was in preschool, but not that one.
Yeah. I have a Goddard school down the street from my house. That's too funny.
Oh my gosh.
Well, is there anything, you feel like stories or anything you feel like our listeners need to hear, anything you want to get out in the open? This is your platform today.
It's so funny because I just recently followed someone who started sharing her story on TikTok. And again, my mind, I can't remember her handle right now, but she started talking about it. And she's like, my goal in talking about this is we want change in religious programs. We want more oversight in religious programs. And I was like, wow, I haven't had a point to my TikTok at all, except just to talk and
get it out.
But I really like what she said. And if it's something I can do and help with and help change in, I absolutely will be involved in more oversight for religious programs. Because of the government doesn't get involved, and someone needs to, because this is absolutely unacceptable. So that's all I got.
Well, it's crazy to me, I hate to politicize this even more, but conservatives are so quick to draw parallels where they're saying, oh, the gays are responsible for this, and trans people are responsible for this, and meanwhile you see these actual detriments of society that always somehow have a link back to religion, and organized religion of some sort, where there's this hierarchy of power and they're not doing anything about it. And it's like, why? Because it's control, and there really needs to be some sort of monitoring program. If you are organized religion to the point where you are getting out of paying taxes, there should be some sort of program to monitor what
someone
you're doing.
Looking into it. That reminds me, actually, something I've wondered about with the cult and why it didn't become a federal investigation was there was a training center in Indianapolis, and they would get orphans from Russia and bring them to the training center I guess they were problem children. I don't know, but they would abuse them they would just basically what happened just in general in the cult. And the state of Indiana was finally like, you can't adopt orphans and then do this to them.
Manual labor and beat them.
Right. So the whole program got shut down and the orphans were adopted out elsewhere. But that's where it stopped. Why? Why did it stop there?
Right.
I've always wondered that. I don't know.
Right.
Because we live in a really ugly country anyways.
True. And of course, all of the Christians in the cult are like, oh, they're doing such a great thing rescuing orphans.
Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it's so amazing. It's so great.
Yes.
I'm like, most abuse to children happens in church families and in the churches. Like, I don't know why these conservative 100%. Christians ignore the shit out of that reality. Like, they really do. It's not happening there. Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah,
like
it is. It is. And
no, it's Kamala with her red shoes. Because
it's her red shoes, damn it.
It's Biden the pedophile.
Yeah.
I'm like, have you ever known a pedophile? Because I have. And
he ain't one.
Not.
Well, you know,
how it works.
My church, and I was a Southern Baptist, but you know, my husband cheated multiple times, and it was like, now they didn't come out and blame me, but but other people around us did, that were in the church. But what my issue with them was, you know, they basically let his family kind of dictate my counseling and how I would be handled. So that was really frustrating because basically I was at my wit's end and I told, you know, I had like hidden all of the stuff that had been going on for years, you know, from my parents, from his parents, from everybody, because silly me was worried people would think badly of us. You know, it was more about that, the visual of what people were going to think looking out, looking in. And so when I finally sat my mom down, who also was like, now really heavily into a church, not my church, but into the church. And, you know, she didn't get saved and baptized until she was in her 40s. Like, you know, so she kind of found God late in life. And she was just like, okay, we'll figure it out. And I told her everything from beginning to end. So I thinking like, okay, you know, I was a Sunday school teacher. I was in the choir. I was there every Sunday with my kids by my side. Like I was very active. And so I went to my pastor and his wife and I'm like, I need to tell you something. So I basically put it all out there. Like I didn't leave anything behind. And like, I shit you not, this was his look. Okay, it's a lot. Like, he's just like, wow. And then like, so, you know, and I straight up said, you know, right now I'm not in the mindset of repairing my marriage. I'm in the mindset of repairing me. And I said that. I'm like, you know, I want to work on me. Like I had no emotions left. Like just the idea of leaving my husband didn't give me any pause. I had no, I wasn't upset. Like I was just dead inside. I was dead inside, like legit.
Yeah. Right.
And he was like, no, I totally understand. And very like sympathetic. And I'm like, okay. And then a week later, after a conversation with his family, I get called in with him and they're like, well, we've been talking and we've decided that, you know, we're only willing to counsel you together with the intent to repair the marriage. And I'm like,
oh gosh,
that's a hard pass for me.
I don't understand why people, since I've been so controlled in my life, I will never understand when or why people ever give control of themselves to anyone else ever. I'll never understand that again. It's bonkers.
And then what's frustrating is the people in the church are mad at me. Like, I mean, like mad at me, like you're destroying your family, you're this, that, and that. And then the people outside of the church are like even now, because I kind of told my story on TikTok too, you know, in a 60-second little kind of video. And I had people on there like, well, that was stupid of you to think the church was going to help you. And I'm like, if you
can't win. You can't win.
For?
Huh? Yeah.
What is church for then?
Right. They're like, you need to go to a real counselor. I'm like, okay, first of all, you hate church and don't believe in God. So I really don't feel like you're in a place to be like, why did you do that? Oh, I don't know. Because at the time that was my life and what I believed. Like, you know.
And you just do the best you can with the resources you have and the knowledge you have. That's all you can do.
Right. But it just kills me because I mean, I literally had a family member whisper in my ear, like, days after, like, you need to stay in this marriage for your children. And I'm like, well, what about me? Like, what about my health and my well-being? And, that didn't matter. That wasn't
women
important.
don't matter. No.
Mom, Grandpa's gonna get me Starbucks, but he's not gonna be here till like 9.
No.
Okay. Children.
Yep. Well, your uterus works, which we can see. That was your only job, really. So
it really was.
Fulfilled your life.
I did it well 3 times.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyways,
all right. Well, what a wonderful story that was to hear. I'm so happy that you have been brave enough, and you probably hear this all the time, but I am just so happy that you have found that within yourself to tell your story, because man, we do appreciate it, and keep doing what you're doing. And please go follow the Pretty Basic on TikTok. And, we'll be the experts on all things cult from here on out.
All right. I'm down. Thank you for having me. This was really fun. This was my first podcast ever. Yay! And this was a lot of fun.
You bought your podcast, Cherry. I'm so
You
excited.
did. I even bought like a special mic and everything.
Yay. Are you only on TikTok, or can we have our followers
I'm the Pretty Basic on Instagram too.
Okay. Cool.
Yep. Awesome. I don't talk about cult stuff on there though. So if they want that kind of content, it's not there.
Awesome.
But
well,
thank you, ladies.
I literally have a child breaking down the door. So with that,
our uterus is knocking.
Yeah. Right. We will say goodbye for this week, and we will see you next week on the Rabbit Hole Heroines.
Bye.
I'm not going.